then he says one of my favorite all-time lines. This is like what I merited to hear from our Holy Master on another occasion. That if a person could observe the stream of his thoughts for only one day, he would see that there is almost no distinction between himself and a madman. Right? Says, Yir'eh shekimat ein chiluk beino lebein meshuga. Right? Rak b'zeh she'meshuga oseh u'mavih machshavotav lefo'al. What's the difference? That a crazy person actually believes his thoughts and acts them out in the world. Aval machshavotav latzmo, the thoughts themselves, hem etzlo mamash kamo etzem meshuga. The thoughts themselves are just like a crazy person's thoughts. So when I first read this line, it was incredibly comforting. Right? Like, it's not just me, right? I've been observing my thought for a while. I see the craziness of my mind. Here's a pretty advanced practitioner. He says, actually, that's what everybody notices, right? If you observe your mind, you'll notice that the mind is crazy. The mind is making up stuff all the time. Right? Just making up stuff all the time. You know, if you remember, hopefully one thing from the teaching tonight, just remember that. My mind is not reliable. Right? It's not reliable. It just has all kinds of crazy thoughts, which is okay. The question is, how are we going to relate to thoughts? Right? Many of you, some of you have done some practice, some of you have done some meditation practice with Russ, some elsewhere, some of you haven't. That's all great. But I'll suggest, anybody who is this not true for, I'd be very interested to hear about that. Anybody who's done any meditation practice has noticed that the mind is pretty crazy, right? The mind does all kinds of stuff. It tells all kinds of stories. It jumps all kinds of places. It's got fascinating things it can do, right? It's very entertaining. It's got all kinds of stories to tell. And that's fine, right? As long as we can have some wisdom, some space in our relationship. So then he says, and then he gave concrete advice how to quiet the mind. And this word, eitzot, eitzah, is a very important word in Hasidic vocabulary because it literally means advice, but it can also mean practice, right? Literally giving somebody a practice to do. And one of the most interesting examples of this is that in the Torah, in the Zohar, and then in Hasidic discourse as well, they talk about taryag itim. Taryag itim. So we talk about taryag, which is 613 mitzvot, right? But the word itin is the Aramaic for eitzot. It's the same word, right? It's 613 pieces of advice, right? Or 613 practices for spiritual perfection, right? It's a shift. It's a shift of the mind of how we want to think about these practices. There's a place to think about them as commandments, right? It's one view. But it's sort of saying, there's another way to look at this, which is these are pieces of advice. They're practices because they're going to transform you in some way if you relate to them as transformational practices, right? So we'll see this, if you look in Hasidic texts, also Kabbalistic texts, post-Zohar, you'll see that phraseology used over and over again of taryag